The acoustic properties had been adjusted to enhance the psychological impact of human speech patterns. The lighting had been calibrated to create optimal conditions for the subliminal visual cues embedded in human presentations. Even the temperature and atmospheric composition had been fine-tuned to promote the neurochemical states that made alien minds most receptive to human proposals. Commander Marcus Torres stood at the central podium, no longer maintaining the pretense of being merely Earth's military attaché. His uniform bore the insignia of Supreme Coordinator of Galactic Security, a position that hadn't existed a year ago but which every representative now understood to be the most important office in known space. "Friends and colleagues," he began, his voice carrying across the chamber with carefully modulated authority. "We gather today not to mourn the end of the old galactic order, but to celebrate the beginning of something far better." The holographic displays that surrounded the chamber showed comparative statistics that were impossible to argue with. Galactic trade had increased by 40% since human guidance had become official. Territorial disputes had fallen to zero. Military expenditures across all civilizations had decreased by 60%, freeing resources for education, infrastructure, and cultural development. Under the previous system, Torres continued, galactic civilization experienced an average of 3.7 major conflicts per decade, with countless smaller wars, territorial disputes, and economic disruptions. In the 18 months since humanity assumed coordination responsibilities, there have been zero conflicts between member civilizations. Ambassador Zekdar sat in the Confederation delegation, his bioluminescence patterns carefully controlled to hide his inner turmoil. The statistics were accurate. Galactic civilization was indeed more peaceful and prosperous than ever before. But the cost of that peace was becoming increasingly clear. Representative Quinter of the former Zerathi Republic raised a trembling appendage. "Coordinator Torres, what guarantees do we have that humanity will respect our autonomy within this new framework?" Torres smiled with what appeared to be genuine warmth. "The same guarantee you've had for the past 40 years, our commitment to the long-term stability and prosperity of galactic civilization. The difference is that now this commitment is open and transparent rather than conducted through indirect methods." Dr. Sarah Chen stepped forward, her presence still carrying the charisma that had charmed diplomats across dozens of worlds. "I understand the concern behind your question, Representative Quinter. You're worried about becoming a subject species rather than an equal partner in galactic civilization." "Exactly. But consider this. Under human guidance, your people have achieved unprecedented prosperity and cultural renaissance. The Zerathi are now respected across the galaxy for your artistic achievements and philosophical contributions. Your population is healthier, your worlds are cleaner, and your society is more stable than at any point in your recorded history." The terrible truth of her words hung in the air. Humanity's manipulation had, by every objective measure, improved the lives of every species in known space. Dr. Chen activated a new display, showing projections of galactic development under various scenarios. "If we were to withdraw our guidance and return to the previous system of competitive expansion and territorial conflict, our models predict a 78% probability of galactic war within 2 decades. Multiple civilizations would collapse, billions would die, and technological progress would be set back centuries." War Commander Dexford, now bearing the title of Integration Coordinator for Vorthon territories, spoke from his position in what had once been the enemy delegation. "The humans offer a choice between comfortable servitude and chaotic freedom. But it's not really a choice, is it? It's the same choice any parent offers a child," Dr. Chen replied gently. "Accept guidance from those with greater experience and wisdom, or face the consequences of decisions you're not yet mature enough to make responsibly." The comparison was both insulting and terrifyingly accurate. Humanity had positioned itself as the adult supervision for a galaxy full of species that couldn't be trusted to manage their own affairs without destroying themselves. Admiral Keshrin stood slowly, his aged frame bearing the weight of a career that had become obsolete overnight. "I have served the cause of galactic peace for over a century. I have seen wars end through negotiation, conflicts resolved through compromise, and differences settled through mutual understanding. But I have never seen peace imposed through manipulation and deception." "With respect, Admiral," Commander Torres replied, "the peace you fought to maintain lasted mere decades. Between conflicts, the peace we have created will last millennia, because you've made alternatives impossible, because we've made alternatives unnecessary." The distinction was crucial, and it cut to the heart of humanity's strategy. They hadn't conquered the galaxy through force. They had made conquest itself obsolete by creating systems where aggression was psychologically, economically, and culturally counterproductive. Representative Mordick of the crystalline hegemony spoke with harmonic frequencies that betrayed deep uncertainty. What happens to species that refuse integration? What happens to those who choose the chaos of freedom over the stability of guidance? Dr. Chen's expression showed what appeared to be genuine sadness. "There are no such species remaining, Representative Mordick. Our analysis identified every potentially non-compliant civilization decades ago. They were helped to see the benefits of cooperation through various means. The implication was chilling. Humanity hadn't just managed existing civilizations, they had eliminated or converted any species that might have resisted management. The Void Cult," Admiral Keshrin said quietly, "they didn't just fade away due to internal contradictions. You destroyed them." "We helped them evolve beyond destructive ideologies," Dr. Chen corrected. "Their population remains intact. Their culture has been preserved in its non-harmful aspects, and their worlds are now productive members of galactic civilization." You're talking about cultural genocide. We're talking about cultural evolution, guided by scientific principles rather than random chance and conflict. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of humanity's achievement became clear. They hadn't just won a war or conquered territory, they had successfully engineered the end of independent galactic civilization and replaced it with a managed system that was objectively superior in every measurable way. Representative Vexler of the Gaseous Collective finally voiced the question that every being in the chamber was thinking. What if we refuse? What if we reject this new order and demand a return to genuine independence? The silence that followed was deafening. Then Dr. Chen smiled with the same warm expression that had first charmed Ambassador Zekthar years ago. "That's not really a viable option anymore," she said gently. "You see, the cultural modifications we've implemented over the past decades have made rejection of human guidance psychologically difficult for most individuals and impossible at the societal level. Your peoples simply don't want independence. Anymore, they want security, prosperity, and purpose, all of which we provide more effectively than any previous system." The horror of the statement was its complete accuracy. Polling data from across the galaxy showed overwhelming support for human leadership among civilian populations. The cultural conditioning had been so thorough that most beings genuinely preferred managed stability to chaotic freedom. But, Dr. Chung continued, even if a significant portion of any species did desire independence, the economic and technological frameworks we've established make isolation non-viable. Your civilizations are now integrated into systems that require human coordination to function. Attempting to withdraw would result in immediate societal collapse. Commander Torres stepped forward to deliver the final piece of the puzzle. Additionally, our defensive preparations ensure that any species attempting to develop aggressive capabilities would be identified and neutralized long before they posed a threat to galactic stability. The message was clear. Resistance was not just futile, it was literally impossible. Humanity had woven themselves so thoroughly into the fabric of galactic civilization that removing them would cause the entire structure to collapse. Ambassador Zekthar stood slowly, his bioluminescence shifting to patterns of formal resignation. "On behalf of the Etherian Confederation, I formally request that humanity accept the role of galactic protectors and assume full responsibility for the coordination of interspecies affairs." One by one, the other representatives stood and echoed the same formal request. Not because they wanted to, but because they understood that the alternative was the destruction of everything they had built. The vote was unanimous. Commander Torres accepted the role with appropriate solemnity. Humanity accepts this responsibility with full awareness of its magnitude. We pledge to preserve the autonomy and dignity of all species within the sustainable frameworks we have established, and to guide galactic civilization toward a future of unprecedented peace and prosperity. As the ceremony concluded and representatives filed out to inform their peoples of the new reality, Dr. Chen remained in the chamber with ambassadors. The Vorthan surrender was signed aboard the human vessel Necessary Fiction in a ceremony that would be remembered as the moment galactic civilization truly understood what humanity represented. War Commander Vexfer, his once-proud carapace, dulled by defeat, placed his genetic seal on documents that effectively dissolved the Vorthan Empire as an independent entity. But it was what happened after the signing that sent shockwaves through the assembled alien dignitaries. Dr. Sarah Chen activated a holographic display that filled the conference chamber with data streams, star charts, and analytical reports spanning decades. Before we discuss the terms of integration, she began, her voice carrying the same warm tone that had charmed diplomats across 17 worlds. I think it's important that everyone understands the full scope of humanity's involvement in galactic affairs. Ambassador Zekthar felt his bioluminescence patterns shift to deep unease. Dr. Chen, what are you showing us? The complete record of humanity's intervention in galactic politics over the past 43 years. She replied matter-of-factly, beginning with our first covert observation missions and ending with yesterday's conclusion of the Vorthon threat. The display zoomed in on a section showing the Zerathi Republic, a moderate trading empire that had collapsed 18 months before humanity's official first contact. Representative Quinter of the Zerathi delegation leaned forward, his insectoid features expressing confusion. The Zerathi Republic fell due to internal corruption and economic collapse, he stated. What does this have to do with humanity? Dr. Chen's smile never wavered. Actually, the Zerathi Republic fell because our analysis indicated they were developing into a potential military threat. Your rapid industrial expansion and increasing territorial ambitions suggested you would become aggressive within 2 decades. The economic collapse was ... facilitated. The silence in the chamber was absolute. The banking algorithms that triggered your financial crisis contained subtle programming errors that compounded over time. The corruption scandals that destroyed your government were based on evidence provided by anonymous sources of evidence that we carefully compiled and distributed. The trade disruptions that crippled your expansion were caused by what appeared to be natural market forces. Representative Quinter's mandibles clicked in shock. You destroyed our civilization. We prevented your civilization from becoming a threat to galactic stability while preserving your people and your culture. The Zerathi are now peaceful trading partners rather than potential conquerors. Everyone benefits. Dr. Rajesh Patel stepped forward, adding his own holographic display. The Zerathi weren't the only ones. The plague that devastated the Korth hegemony 5 years ago was specifically designed to target their warrior caste while leaving their civilian population unharmed. The Korth were developing biological weapons that could have destabilized 3 sectors. Another section of the display highlighted the stellar dominion of Arkex. The civil war that fractured the Arkex dominion, Dr. Patel continued, was instigated by carefully placed intelligence about government corruption intelligence, that was true, but which we had to discover and strategically reveal to create maximum political impact. Admiral Kashrin, who had remained silent throughout the presentation, finally spoke. How many civilizations have you ... influenced? Commander Marcus Torres consulted his datapad. 47 direct interventions over 4 decades, ranging from economic manipulation to biological warfare to strategic assassination of key political figures, all conducted with the goal of maintaining galactic stability. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. The Zenith Collective's expansion into the neutral zone was halted when their lead admirals died in what appeared to be accidents. Torres continued with clinical precision. The Crimson Alliance's military buildup was stopped when their weapons manufacturing facilities experienced cascading technical failures. The Void Cult's religious extremism was contained when their leadership suffered. What their own doctors diagnosed as divine visions actually carefully calibrated psychoactive compounds. Representative Mordic of the crystalline hegemony's harmonic voice trembled with a frequency that indicated deep distress. You've been secretly manipulating galactic civilization for decades. We've been maintaining galactic civilization, Dr. Chen corrected gently. Left to its own devices, this galaxy would have experienced at least 12 major wars in the past 40 years. The mathematical models are quite clear on this point, she gestured, and the display showed a complex probability matrix. Species development follows predictable patterns. Industrial expansion leads to resource competition. Resource competition leads to territorial disputes. Territorial disputes lead to military conflicts. We simply intervened at earlier stages in the cycle to prevent the conflicts from occurring. Ambassador Zekdarspadens had shifted to something resembling horror. The questions you asked during our cultural exchanges, you weren't learning about us, you were updating your files. Both, actually. We had been observing galactic civilization for decades, but direct contact allowed us to refine our understanding of each species' psychological and cultural frameworks. For instance, we had theoretical models of Etherian decision-making processes, but spending time with you allowed us to calibrate those models with extraordinary precision. The implications were staggering. Every friendly conversation, every cultural gift, every moment of apparent discovery and wonder had been humanity. Updating their psychological warfare database, Dr. Chen activated another display section. The art installations we created weren't just cultural exchanges. They were large-scale psychological conditioning experiments. The frequencies in our music were designed to promote specific emotional states in different species. The literature we shared contained narrative structures that subtly influenced how alien minds processed concepts of conflict and cooperation. War Commander Thexfor, who had thought himself defeated by superior military strategy, realized the true scope of his humiliation. The demoralization of my crews, that wasn't just battlefield psychology. No, Dr. Chen confirmed. That was the culmination of 2 years of carefully crafted cultural conditioning. Every Vorthan who attended our cultural events, every officer who listened to our music, every soldier who viewed our art was being subtly prepared for exactly the psychological state they would experience when faced with human military doctrine. Dr. Patel stepped forward again. The biological samples we collected during medical exchanges weren't for xenobiology research, they were for weapons development. We now have detailed genetic and biological profiles of every major species in known space. We can create targeted pathogens, psychological agents, or performance enhancers for any species we choose. The chamber erupted in horrified murmurs as the full extent of humanity's deception became clear. They hadn't simply been gathering intelligence, they had been treating the entire galaxy as a laboratory for developing species-specific control mechanisms, but perhaps most importantly, Dr. Chen continued, her voice cutting through the chaos. We used our cultural exchanges to implant what we call cultural logic bombs in every major civilization. What does that mean? Admiral Keshran asked, though his expression suggested he dreaded the answer. Concepts, ideas, and cultural frameworks that seem benign but fundamentally alter how a species thinks about conflict, expansion, and galactic citizenship. The philosophical discussions we had with Confederation scholars weren't just exchanges of ideas. They were carefully designed to introduce thought patterns that make aggressive expansion psychologically uncomfortable for your species. She gestured to another display. The economic theories we shared with trading civilizations contain subtle mathematical principles that make resource hoarding and territorial expansion economically inefficient. The entertainment we provided to military cultures included heroic narratives that redefined honor and courage in ways that discourage conquest. Representative Vexler of the Gaseous Collective spoke with barely controlled panic. You've been reprogramming our civilizations at the cultural level. We've been optimizing galactic civilization for long-term stability and mutual prosperity. Dr. Chen replied, as if the distinction were obvious. The old patterns of expansion, conflict, and empire building were demonstrably unsustainable. We simply provided better alternatives. The horrible elegance of the strategy was becoming clear. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy through force, they had conquered it through culture, making every species unconsciously adopt frameworks that served human interests while believing they were making independent choices. Ambassador Zek looked around the chamber at representatives from dozens of worlds, seeing the same dawning realization in every alien face. How long have you been in control? Dr. Chen considered the question seriously. Control is a strong word. We've been providing guidance for 43 years, active management for the past 20, and direct oversight since our official first contact. but we've always worked to preserve the autonomy and dignity of every species within sustainable parameters. Sustainable parameters, Admiral Kashrin repeated hollowly. War Commander Vexfer had lived through 17 campaigns of conquest, had broken the defenses of species across the Outer Rim, and had never known defeat. That certainty died in the first hour of what was supposed to be the Vorthan Empire's greatest triumph. His flagship Dread Sovereign shuddered under impacts that shouldn't exist. The tactical display showed impossible formations human vessels, emerging from asteroid fields that his scouts had confirmed were empty just days before. Worse, they weren't fighting like any military force he'd encountered. "Sir," his tactical officer's voice cracked with confusion, "the asteroid belt in Sector 7 is ... moving." "Asteroids don't move, you fool." "No, sir. I mean the entire field is accelerating toward our supply convoy." Somehow the humans have turned the rocks themselves into weapons. Vexfer's compound eyes focused on the display with growing horror. The humans weren't using the asteroid field as cover, they had weaponized it entirely. Massive asteroids, equipped with crude but effective propulsion systems, were accelerating toward his logistics ships with devastating kinetic force. When they impacted, the explosions registered on sensors across 3 star systems. Townley. Were they preparing this? He whispered. The answer came from an unexpected source. Admiral Keshrin's voice echoed across the command bridge on an open frequency. "Addressed to all Vorthan forces, War Commander, this is Admiral Keshrin of the Confederation Navy. I'm broadcasting under a flag of truce to inform you that General Webb has provided me with detailed psychological profiles of your command structure. He suggests you'll be more receptive to surrender terms if you understand the futility of continued resistance." Vexfer's rage flared. "Psychological profiles? What nonsense, for instance?" the Admiral continued. "Human analysis indicates that Vorthan military doctrine relies heavily on personal honor and fear of showing weakness before subordinates. The humans have specifically designed their tactical approach to exploit these cultural blind spots." On cue, a new wave of human attacks began, but these weren't aimed at military targets. Instead, human forces struck the Vorthan Emperor's personal retreat, 3 key cultural sites, and the homeworld's primary communication hub. None were militarily significant, but all were symbolically devastating. "They're attacking our culture," his communications officer reported, voice hollow. "With shock, they're broadcasting the destruction across every Vorthan frequency." Vexfer realized with growing dread that the humans understood something fundamental about Vorthan psychology that even he had never articulated. His people's morale was tied to the invincibility of their symbols of power. By demonstrating that they could strike anywhere, at any target, the humans were breaking Vorthan will to fight without massive casualties. Meanwhile, in the Kepler system, Commander Marcus Torres coordinated an entirely different kind of warfare aboard the human battlecruiser Necessary Fiction. The ship's name, like so much about humanity, was more truth than anyone had realized. "Status report on the Vorthan client states," he requested. Lieutenant Commander Park consulted her display. "Rebellions have begun on 6 worlds. The intelligence packages we distributed are working exactly as projected. The subject species now have detailed information about Vorthan occupation forces, supply lines, and administrative weaknesses." Torres nodded with satisfaction. While alien military doctrine focused on fleet engagements and territorial control, humans understood that wars were won by breaking the enemy's capacity to maintain their empire. The Vorthans had conquered dozens of species over the centuries, ruling through fear and superior firepower. Those same species were now receiving anonymous intelligence packets containing everything they needed to know about their oppressors' vulnerabilities. "The Zalani uprising in the outer spiral is particularly effective," Park continued. "They've used our intelligence to target the Vorthan administrative centers with surgical precision. The occupying forces are requesting immediate reinforcement. Reinforcements the Vorthans can't spare because they're trapped in our carefully prepared killing fields," Torres observed. "How are our biological warfare operations proceeding?" Dr. Rajesh Patel's voice joined the conversation via secure communication. The targeted pathogen release was successful. It's designed specifically for Vorthan physiology, completely harmless to every other known species, but it causes severe disorientation and fatigue in Vorthans. Their crews are operating at perhaps 60% efficiency. The biological weapon was perhaps the most disturbing aspect of human warfare doctrine. Not because it was lethal it specifically wasn't, but because its existence proved how thoroughly humans had studied their potential enemies. 2 years of friendly cultural exchange had included detailed biological analysis of every species they'd encountered, including the Vorthans they'd supposedly never met. On the Confederation capital world, Ambassador Zekthar stood in the emergency session of the Galactic Council, watching representatives from a dozen species struggle to process the reality of human warfare. The elegant chambers, designed for peaceful deliberation, felt inadequate for the discussion at hand. They're not just fighting the Vorthans, Representative Mordic of the Crystalline Hegemony was saying, her harmonic voice tinged with awe and fear. They're dismantling an entire empire with surgical precision. Look at these reports. They've somehow turned Vorthon client species against their occupiers, collapsed supply lines across 17 systems, and neutralized military assets without the massive casualties we'd expect from such a campaign. But how did they know? Demanded Representative Vexler of the Gaseous Collective. How did they know about Vorthon biological vulnerabilities? How did they know about the psychological pressure points of client species they'd never encountered? Zekthar had been dreading this moment, but the truth could no longer be avoided. Because they studied all of us, he said quietly. Every cultural exchange, every friendly conversation, every research collaboration, they were building a comprehensive database of galactic civilization. The silence that followed was deafening. The art exhibit Dr. Chen organized on Kelter 7, he continued, included sonic frequencies specifically calibrated to induce calm in 12 different species. The poetry readings contained subliminal elements designed to enhance trust and openness. The scientific collaborations gave them access to biological samples from every major species in known space. Representative Mordic, as crystalline form, darkened. You're saying they've been conducting psychological and biological warfare operations on all of us? I'm saying they've been preparing to defend us more effectively than we ever defended ourselves. The distinction was important, but increasingly academic. The humans had demonstrated that they could manipulate the psychology, biology, and social structures of every known species with frightening precision. Whether they used these capabilities for protection or conquest might ultimately be a question of perspective. Back in the war zone, War Commander Vexfer faced a tactical situation that defied everything he understood about military operations. His forces weren't being defeated, they were being systematically isolated, demoralized, and rendered ineffective without the climactic battles that Vorthan culture demanded. "Sir," his intelligence chief reported with barely controlled panic, "we've lost contact with our forces in the inner spiral. Not destroyed, lost contact. Our ships are simply not responding to orders. Jamming? No, sir. The communication channels are clear. The crews are just ... refusing to fight." Reports indicate widespread cases of what their doctors are calling existential fatigue, a complete loss of will to continue military operations. Vexfer's mandibles clicked in frustration. The humans had somehow found a way to break Vorthon morale without destroying Vorthon ships. His crews were surrendering, not because they faced overwhelming force, but because they had lost the psychological capacity to continue fighting. How is this possible? The answer came from an unexpected source of human communication on a previously unknown frequency. Dr. Sarah Chen's Voice.com and Professional filled the bridge. War Commander Dexper. This is Dr. Chen of the Human Diplomatic Corps. I believe we should talk. I don't negotiate with primitives. You're not negotiating with primitives, Commander. You're facing a species that has spent 2 years studying every aspect of your psychology, biology, and military doctrine. We know that Vorthan warriors require psychological validation of their strength to maintain fighting effectiveness. We know that your species experiences severe existential disorientation when faced with opponents who refuse to engage according to traditional combat protocols. And we know that your empire's cohesion depends on the perception of Vorthan invincibility. Her words struck home with devastating accuracy. What do you want? To give you a choice. Continue this campaign and watch us dismantle your empire piece by piece. using methods you can't counter because you don't understand them. Or accept the new reality of galactic politics and find your place in a more stable order. Vexver looked around his bridge, seeing the defeat in his officers' compound eyes. They had brought 1,200 ships to conquer the galaxy and found themselves outmaneuvered by a species they had dismissed as harmless researchers. War Commander Vexver of the Vorthan Empire stood before the assembled War Council, his scarred carapace gleaming under the harsh lights of the command chamber. 2 years of preparation were finally coming to fruition. The greatest military campaign in galactic history was about to begin. The pathetic Confederation has grown even more complacent, he announced, his voice carrying the authority of a warrior who had conquered 17 systems. Their new human pets have made them soft, distracted by cultural exchanges and peaceful nonsense. Today, we shatter their illusions forever. The holographic display showed the Vorthon fleet, 1,200 vessels strong, the largest armada ever assembled. Across the chamber, his subordinates clicked their mandibles in anticipation. For generations, the Vorthans had been contained by Confederation treaties and defensive pacts. No longer, the humans have actually made our task easier. Vexver continued with contempt. Their cultural centers have mapped the Confederation's weaknesses for us. Every report shows the same pattern: centralized defenses, predictable patrol routes, industrial capacity concentrated on a handful of worlds. Will crush them in 6 months, 300 light-years away. On the seemingly peaceful Human Cultural Center, orbiting Regulus Station, Dr. Sarah Chen received a priority communication that made her smile for the first time in weeks. She turned to the center's assistant director, who, to any casual observer, was clearly a xenanthropologist studying Confederation social structures. "Marcus," she said quietly, "it's time." Commander Marcus Torres set down his research notes, actually detailed tactical assessments of local defense installations, and activated a concealed communication array. Across Confederation space, similar signals went out from every human cultural center, research station, and diplomatic mission. The transformation was immediate and terrifying. On Sire Prime, the human research team studying quantum crystal production suddenly revealed that their cultural center had actually been constructed around a massive weapons depot, the quaint building that had hosted poetry readings and art. Exhibitions split open like a flower, revealing enough firepower to outfit a battle fleet. The quantum crystal manufacturing facilities that Dr. Chen had studied so carefully 6 months earlier were secured within minutes by perfectly positioned human forces. On Kelter 7, Dr. Rajesh Patel's research expedition emerged from their modest compound in full military gear, moving with precision that spoke of months of planning. They didn't attack the Starship construction facilities they had been protecting them all along. The underground warehouses that production supervisor Zixtel had proudly shown off were already under human control, their contents relocated and their automated defenses reprogrammed. Admiral Keshrin was in his flagship's ready room, reviewing what appeared to be routine patrol reports when his communications officer burst in without ceremony. "Sir, we're receiving priority alerts from across the fleet. The Vorthans have launched their invasion, but, sir, something's wrong with our defensive positions." "What do you mean wrong?" Keshrin demanded, rushing to the bridge. The tactical display told a story that defied comprehension. Where there should have been vulnerable supply lines and isolated defensive posts, the Admiral saw an integrated fortress network spanning multiple sectors. Human cultural centers were revealing themselves as military installations positioned at every strategic choke point the Vorthons had planned to exploit. "How is this possible?" he whispered. General Harrison Webb materialized on the communication screen, no longer the friendly cultural attach who had shared tea and discussed galactic history. His expression was grim, professional, and utterly competent. "Admiral, I'm assuming direct coordination of Confederation defensive operations under emergency military protocols. My people have been preparing for this moment for 2 years. Your people?" "General Webb, I don't understand. The Human Cultural Exchange Program was a military operation." "Admiral, every question Dr. Chen asked, every facility Dr. Patel toured, every friendship we built, it was all intelligence gathering. We identified the Vorthan threat 18 months ago, and have been preparing the Confederation's defenses ever since. On the bridge of his flagship, War Commander Thexfer watched his carefully planned invasion turn into a nightmare. The first wave of Vorthan ships had jumped into what should have been empty space and found themselves facing concentrated defensive fire from installations that hadn't existed in their intelligence reports. How are there human warships at the Kepler Junction? He roared at his intelligence chief. Our spies reported that region was undefended. Sir, according to all our data, it was undefended. These installations, they weren't there yesterday. They had been there yesterday. They had been there for months, hidden within the innocent-looking structures that the humans had so generously offered to establish throughout Confederation space. Every cultural center, every research station, every diplomatic mission had been a military depot waiting for activation. Dr. Chen stood in what had been the main exhibition hall of the Regulus Cultural Center, now revealed as a sophisticated command center coordinating defensive operations across 7 sectors. Ambassador Zektar stood beside her, his bioluminescence flickering with patterns she had learned to recognize as shock and disbelief. 2 years, he said quietly. You've been planning this for 2 years. Planning to defend you? Yes, Dr. Chen replied, her tone gentle but firm. The Vorthans have been building toward this invasion for decades. Our analysis predicted they would move when they believed the Confederation was at its most vulnerable. We made sure that when that moment came, you would be ready. But the deception, all our conversations, our friendship is real, Zektar. The deception was necessary. If the Confederation had known about our military preparations, they would have been diplomatically obligated to warn other powers. The Vorthans would have adjusted their plans, prepared countermeasures. Surprise was our only advantage. The tactical displays around them showed the battle unfolding across multiple sectors. The Vorthan invasion force, expecting to face scattered defensive units and hastily assembled militia, instead encountered coordinated resistance from installations they had never suspected existed. Human vessels far more advanced than their primitive first contact ship had suggested emerged from concealed positions throughout Confederation space. Commander Torres' voice echoed through the command center. Phase 1 complete. All primary objectives secured. Vorthan advance elements have been contained in 12 sectors, moving to Phase 2 counteroffensive operations. Ambassador Zektar's patterns shifted to something Dr. Chen had never seen before, complex mixture of awe, fear, and dawning comprehension. Your ship, that first probe we detected. It wasn't your first attempt at faster-than-light travel, was it? Dr. Chen shook her head. It was our 100th. We've been watching galactic civilization for 40 years, studying every species, every conflict, every pattern of aggression and peace. When we finally revealed ourselves, we knew exactly what we were walking into. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. Everything you told us about humanity's dreams of joining galactic civilization, was true. But we also knew that galactic civilization was fragile, maintained by a balance of forces that could collapse at any moment. The Vorthans were just the most obvious threat. There were other species that might have destabilized the peace in different ways, at different times. On his flagship, War Commander Thexper faced the impossible reality that his unstoppable invasion force was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that shouldn't exist. The humans, who his intelligence had dismissed as harmless researchers, were coordinating the most sophisticated defensive operation in galactic history. Pull back to the outer spiral, he ordered through gritted teeth. Regroup and reassess. Sir, his tactical officer reported with barely concealed panic. Retreat routes are compromised. Human forces have positioned themselves at every major hyperspace junction. We're trapped. The War Commander's compound eyes focused on the tactical display with growing horror. The humans hadn't just prepared to defend against invasion, they had prepared to end it permanently. Every escape route, every fallback position, every contingency the Vorthans had planned was blocked by forces that had been waiting patiently for 2 years. In the Regulus Command Center, Dr. Chen watched the tactical situation with the satisfaction of a chess master executing a long-planned checkmate. The Vorthan Empire, the galaxy's great military threat, was being systematically neutralized, not by overwhelming force, but by superior preparation and strategic positioning. I have one more question for you, my friend, Ambassador Zek said quietly, of course. This morning, I thought I was welcoming humanity into galactic civilization. Tonight, I'm realizing that humanity has been running galactic civilization for 2 years without anyone noticing. My question is, ... what happens now? Dr. Chen turned to face him, her expression as warm and sincere as it had been on that first day of contact. Now, we make sure something like the Vorthan threat never arises again. And we do it together as friends and allies, just as we always planned. 6 months after humanity's introduction to the Galactic Confederation, Dr. Sarah Chen had become something of a celebrity across 17 different worlds. Her infectious enthusiasm for alien cultures and seemingly boundless curiosity had opened doors that typically remained closed to new species for decades. She stood now in the crystalline halls of the Surican Archive, the galaxy's greatest repository of knowledge, asking what appeared to be another innocent question. The manufacturing processes for quantum resonance crystals must be fascinating, she said to archivist Morden, her eyes bright with genuine interest. I imagine the precision required must be extraordinary. Do you concentrate production on specific worlds, or distribute it across multiple systems for efficiency? Morden's crystalline form chimed pleasantly the Sorokan equivalent of a proud smile. Like so many others, he had grown fond of Dr. Chen's earnest questions. Oh, we centralize most production on Sire Prime and its 3 industrial moons. The quantum fields there are naturally stable, making them ideal for the delicate calibration processes. Here, let me show you the distribution maps. 3 star systems away, Commander Marcus Torres reviewed the latest intelligence reports in his modest office aboard the human diplomatic vessel Pioneer's Dream. To any casual observer, the ship appeared to be exactly what it claimed, a peaceful exploration vessel carrying humanity's eager ambassadors to the stars. The reality was considerably different. Quantum crystal production centralized on Sire Prime, he noted, adding another entry to the comprehensive database that now contained detailed information on virtually every strategic resource in Confederation, space, military applications. Lieutenant Commander Jessica Park looked up from her own workstation. According to our analysis, quantum crystals are essential for shield generators, FTL communication arrays, and advanced sensor systems. Control those production facilities, and you effectively control military communications across 7 sectors. Torres nodded, filing the information away. The intelligence operation disguised as cultural exchange had exceeded even his most optimistic projections. 6 months of enthusiastic human diplomats asking seemingly innocent questions had yielded more strategic intelligence than the Confederation's enemies had gathered in centuries of traditional espionage on the industrial world of Kelter 7. Dr. Rajesh Patel was touring yet another fascinating manufacturing facility, this one producing the exotic alloys used in starship construction. His guide, production supervisor Zixtel, was eagerly explaining their processes to the attentive human scientist. The beauty of our system, Zixtel bubbled, his gaseous form shifting colors with excitement, is that we can produce enough hull plating for an entire battle fleet in just 6 standard months. The automated foundries work continuously fed by or from the asteroid mining stations in the Kelter belt. Remarkable efficiency, Patel agreed, discreetly recording the production figures on his cultural documentation device, and I imagine you maintain significant stockpiles for emergency situations. Oh yes, we keep at least 18 months of production in reserve at all times. The warehouses extend 4 kilometers underground, climate-controlled, naturally, and protected by the most advanced security systems in the sector. Patel's warm smile never wavered as he mentally calculated exactly how many ships those stockpiles could produce and where the warehouses were located. Another piece of the galactic puzzle fell into place. The human strategy was elegantly simple. In its deception, every question seemed to stem from academic curiosity or cultural interest. Every request for information was framed as an attempt to understand and contribute to galactic civilization. The humans shared freely of their own knowledge, their crude but effective technologies, their art and literature, their biological and cultural databases. The generosity was so overwhelming that few bothered to notice how specific and strategic their questions were becoming. On the Confederation capital world of Centaurus Prime, General Harrison Webb was meeting with Fleet Admiral Keshrin of the Confederation Navy. The conversation had started with Webb's expressed interest in galactic peacekeeping methods and had gradually evolved into what amounted to a comprehensive briefing on Confederation military doctrine. Our greatest challenge, Admiral Keshrin explained over what humans would recognize as T, comes from the Vorthan Empire in the Outer Spiral. They've been building their fleet strength for decades, but their expansion has been contained by our mutual defense treaties with the border worlds. Webb leaned forward with apparent fascination. How do you maintain such extensive defensive coordination across such vast distances? The logistics must be staggering. Indeed, we maintain a network of supply depots and communication relays throughout the border regions. Here, let me show you. The holographic display that materialized showed the entire Confederation defensive network supply lines, fleet positions, communication nodes, and strategic choke points. Webb memorized every detail while maintaining his expression of academic interest. Your strategists must be brilliant, Webb said admiringly. Though I have to ask, are there any weaknesses in such an extensive system? Points where disruption might cause cascading failures. Admiral Keshrin's laugh was rueful. Unfortunately, yes. If someone were to simultaneously target the 3 primary communication hubs here, and here, it would fragment our command structure for weeks. And if they somehow neutralized our main supply depot at Regulus Station, ... double quotes, he shook his head. But such coordinated strikes would require perfect intelligence and impossible timing. No single force could manage it. Webb nodded sympathetically, while mentally noting that humanity was already developing contingency plans for exactly such coordinated strikes, back on Earth. In a facility that didn't officially exist, analysts worked around the clock processing the flood of intelligence, pouring in from humanity's cultural ambassadors. Every friendly conversation, every eager question, every enthusiastic cultural exchange had yielded another piece of vital strategic information. Dr. Chen's assistant, Maria Santos, summarized the week's intelligence harvest. Confederation, defensive, doctrine relies heavily on predictable patrol patterns and centralized command structures. Primary fleet formations favor overwhelming firepower over maneuverability. Industrial capacity is concentrated on 14 key worlds with minimal redundancy. Most importantly, their entire strategic philosophy assumes potential threats will announce themselves through traditional aggressive postures. The assessment was damning. The Confederation's peaceful nature, while admirable, had made them strategically naive. They had grown comfortable in their role as the galaxy's benevolent guardians, never imagining that a threat might emerge from within their own welcoming embrace. Meanwhile, throughout Confederation space, human cultural centers were being established. On dozens of worlds, each one was staffed by enthusiastic diplomats and researchers who continued asking their innocent questions while conducting detailed surveys of local infrastructure, defense capabilities, and resource distribution. The aliens were delighted to help, viewing the human interest as a sign of successful integration. On the aggressive frontier, the Vorthan Empire watched humanity's integration with amused contempt. War Commander Thexver reviewed the intelligence. Reports his spies had gathered on the new species with barely concealed disdain. Peaceful researchers and cultural ambassadors, he growled to his staff. The Confederation has found themselves some new pets, it seems. When we begin our expansion, these humans will make useful servants. They seem to have a talent for gathering information. If only he had realized exactly what kind of information they were gathering, and for whom, as the 6th month of humanity's galactic integration drew to a close. Dr. Chen stood once again in an observation lounge, this time aboard a Confederation research vessel. She was no longer Alon ambassador. Zekthar had joined her, their friendship having deepened over months of cultural exchange. "Your people continue to exceed every expectation," he said warmly. "I've never seen a species adapt so quickly to galactic society while maintaining such genuine enthusiasm for learning." Dr. Chen smiled, her expression as warm and sincere as ever. "We've learned so much from all of you, about technology, about diplomacy, about the delicate balance that maintains peace across such a vast galaxy." She paused, looking out at the stars. "I just hope we can prove worthy of the trust you've placed in us." Ambassador Zekdar's bioluminescence pulsed with affection. "You already have, my dear friend." Neither of them mentioned that humanity had just concluded the most comprehensive intelligence operation in galactic history, or that in hidden facilities across human space, military planners were finalizing strategies that would reshape the balance of power among the stars. Some gifts, after all, were best left as surprises. The anomaly first appeared on the Confederation's deep space monitoring arrays as little more than a gravitational hiccup, ripple in spacetime that shouldn't exist, according to 2,000 years of established physics. Senior astrogator Valinix had seen countless false readings in her century of service aboard the research vessel Luminous Inquiry, but this one made her primary sensory organs flutter with unease. "Ambassador Zekthar," she called across the bridge, her melodic Etherean voice carrying undertones of concern. "You need to see this." Ambassador Zektar glided over on his three articulated legs, his translucent form shimmering with the soft bioluminescence that indicated focused attention. As the Confederation's leading xenosociologist, he had overseen first contact with 17 primitive species over the past 3 decades. Each had followed the same predictable pattern: fear, gradual acceptance, then grateful integration into galactic civilization. "What am I looking at, Valinix?" he asked, studying the holographic display that showed a crude angular vessel emerging from what appeared to be a self-generated wormhole. "A ship, sir, but, according to our sensors, it's using a propulsion system that violates the Kethmoran principles. The energy readings suggest they're creating artificial gravity wells without exotic matters, something our own physicists declared impossible millennia ago." Zekthar's bioluminescence shifted to a puzzled amber. The vessel was indeed primitive by Confederation standards. Its hull showed clear signs of atmospheric entry burns, and its design was brutally functional rather than elegant. Yet here it was, traveling faster than light, using technology that shouldn't work. "Origin point?" he inquired. "Third planet of the Sol system, Outer Rim sector. Initial scans show a young civilization, radio communications, chemical rockets, primitive nuclear technology. They call themselves humans." The ambassador's excitement patterns flickered across his form. Another species to guide toward enlightenment. Another successful integration to add to his distinguished record. Prep the first contact protocols. Standard approach, non-threatening posture, cultural exchange, gradual introduction to galactic society. 3 days later, the Luminous Inquiry entered Earth's solar system, broadcasting standard, peaceful intentions across all known communication frequencies. The response came faster than expected. That the usual mixture of fear and confusion, but a warm professional greeting in perfectly translated galactic standard. "Welcome to our solar system, beings of the stars," came the voice from Earth. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen of the United Earth First Contact Committee. We've been hoping for this day for generations." Zekdar exchanged glances with his communication officer. Most primitive species required weeks to even acknowledge that the signals weren't some natural phenomenon. These humans seemed almost ... prepared. Within hours, a small human delegation arrived aboard a vessel that was, while primitive, surprisingly well-designed for its technological level. Dr. Chen herself was a compact being with dark hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything around her with intense curiosity. She was accompanied by General Harrison Webb, a stern-faced military representative, and Dr. Rajesh Patel, their chief xenobiologist. "Ambassador Zekthar," Dr. Chen said, bowing slightly in what their cultural database indicated was a human gesture of respect. "It's an honor to meet you. We've been monitoring your transmissions for several hours, and we're amazed by the sophistication of your society." The ambassador's pleasure patterns glowed warmly. "The honor is ours, Dr. Chen. Your species has achieved faster-than-light travel remarkably quickly for such a young civilization. Most species require centuries after achieving nuclear technology before making such leaps." Dr. Chun's smile, other positive human expression broadened. "We've always been curious about what lies beyond our world. When our scientists first detected gravitational anomalies suggesting FTL travel was possible, we devoted enormous resources to understanding the phenomenon. We may not have your elegant solutions, but we found a way to make it work." Over the following days, the humans proved to be ideal first contact subjects. They asked thoughtful questions about galactic history, shared their art and music freely, and showed genuine interest in learning about other species. Dr. Patel spent hours with the ship's xenobiologist, comparing notes on evolutionary development. General Webb, while initially suspicious, gradually warmed to the idea of galactic citizenship. After learning about the Confederation's peaceful nature, "Your species shows remarkable adaptability," Zekthar noted during one of their many cultural exchange sessions. "Most civilizations struggle with the concept of non-competitive coexistence. You seem to grasp it intuitively." Dr. Chen nodded. Thoughtfully, humanity has always dreamed of joining a larger community. We've made many mistakes on our own world wars, environmental damage, social inequality, the chance to learn from older, wiser civilizations and contribute our own perspectives to galactic society. It's everything we've hoped for. The humans' openness was refreshing. They shared their technology willingly, explaining their crude but functional FTL drive with impressive detail. They offered samples of their art, literature, and music, eager to contribute to galactic culture. They even provided extensive data about their world's biology and ecosystem. Fascinated by the possibility of cosmic perspective on their planet's development, when it came time for formal classification, the decision was unanimous among the Confederation observers. The humans displayed none of the aggressive tendencies that marked dangerous species, none of the xenophobia that complicated integration, and none of the technological arrogance that made some civilizations difficult partners. Category 3. Benign primitives with high integration potential, Zekthar dictated to the official record. Recommend immediate initiation of standard uplift. Protocols. Species demonstrates remarkable adaptability, genuine curiosity about galactic civilization, and strong cooperative instincts. Initial technology sharing suggests they will benefit greatly from Confederation membership while contributing their own unique perspectives. As the Luminous Inquiry prepared to escort the human delegation to the Confederation capital world, Zekthar felt the deep satisfaction that came with successful first contact. These humans would make excellent galactic citizens, to learn, willing to share, and seemingly incapable of the violent impulses that plagued so many young civilizations. He found Dr. Chen in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars with an expression of wonder that never seemed to fade. "Nervous about meeting the Galactic Council?" he asked gently. She turned, her smile as warm as ever. "A little," she admitted, "but mostly excited. This is the beginning of a new chapter for humanity, isn't it? The start of something wonderful." Zekthar's contentment patterns glowed softly. "Indeed it is, Dr. Chen. Welcome to galactic civilization." Neither of them could have imagined that this moment of genuine warmth would later be remembered as the beginning of the most sophisticated deception in galactic history, the moment when humanity began its quiet conquest of the stars.